We're ready.
All right, we're here in the Davis Love III boardroom at Harbour Town with Davis Love III, talking about the restoration, renovation of Harbour Town. What would you call it, and what would you describe as the scope of the work out here?
Well, it was a big scope. Hopefully it's just a refresh. There's some tweaks, some minor changes, but a loving restoration. You don't want to change a masterpiece. You just want to bring it up to modern times. And we went back to some old pictures, but I don't think we changed anything that would make Pete mad.
Yeah. What do you love about Pete's architecture, and specifically out here, some of the things that you could point to?
Well, I love the strategy of the golf course. I think when John Farrell says the tour players don't want anybody to change the golf course, they're talking about the strategy and the playability and the character of the golf course. They're not talking about features. They're not talking about bulkheads or pot bunkers. They don't want it to be lengthened just to lengthen it. So that was the real challenge here, was to make sure that we did something architecturally significant that Pete would like, but not change the character of the strat. There's so much strategy on this golf course, and it's just little things that you have to do to play it well. And Pete did that, whether it was a small course like this or a big course like TPC Sawgrass. He made you think your way around the golf course, and I don't think the guys wanted that to change.
Yeah, well, you've obviously found a way to play it really well. Won 5 times here, your first tour win. A lot of symmetry with this place. You've had the opportunity to do Finley at UNC and the Plantation course at Sea Island, which probably hold a lot of meaning to you personally. What did this mean to get the call to be the one to do the work here?
Well, really honored to be a part of the team, and I think that's why they came to me. They talked to several people, and then they came to me because they knew that I would be a team player. I wouldn't come in and try to dictate or take over. Even though Pete was a little bit gruff and a little bit opinionated, he was a team player. When the Goodwin family or the PGA Tour at TPC Sawgrass, they wanted to make changes or they wanted to do something different, he figured out a way to do it. I think they knew that I would make sure that not only did we follow the goals and the rules, but that we would also honor Pete and we would be easy to work with. So it was an honor to be included, certainly as architects, but also as a player. I think that's what they wanted out of me, a little bit of the PGA Tour player that had played here and a little bit of the architect to make sure that all the boxes were checked when we finished this project.
They named a burger after you here at Fraser's Tavern. Is that the first food item named after you? And what was the inspiration behind the burger?
It's not my first food item or a restaurant. I've been lucky to be a big part of the Sea Island Resort since I first started on tour. But it's an honor here because they included me with the Scotty Schefflers and the guys that have had a burger named after them. But it's for charity, and that's what the PGA Tour is all about. It's giving back a little bit, and they know I like to eat. So I came up with a good burger and a good plan. It's good for charity, and I get some snacks out of it.
Now that the work is done here, what's next for you and the design firm?
We're just extremely blessed to be really, really busy. COVID was great for golf on TV. It was great for professional golf. It was great for the average guy to get out and play. And clubs are busy now, building new and renovating golf courses that are now financially successful. So it's keeping us busy. So we have a couple in South Florida next year. Another renovation at Sea Island that we're just supervising the renovation of the Tom Fazio golf course. And so we're going to have a busy summer next year, and it's always exciting to move on to the next thing.
And Hazeltine, right, is you guys working there?
We built a short course for Hazeltine, and that came out great. And they're master planning what they're going to do with the big golf course. They have the KPMG ladies next year. They have the Ryder Cup in 29. They have a busy schedule, so we're trying to figure out what and when we would do to that golf course.
Okay. Well, thanks for your time. We look forward to seeing Harbour Town.
Thank you.
What Joe probably doesn't know is we led into this right now with some cannon fire and some comments from Davis Love III. But welcome back to the Links Golf Podcast. I'm digital editor Al Lunsford. Here with Joe Passov to talk a little bit more about Harbour Town. It's reopening after a 6-month restoration project led by Davis Love III and his design firm, as well as the folks there at the Sea Pines Resort. I obviously got the chance to go and see the updates myself, talk to DL3 about that, and Joe and I are going to expand on that a little bit more. It is a very historic place in tournament golf and public golf in the United States, and for the reputation and resume of its original architect, Pete Dye, whose name remains on the scorecard. That's one of the things Davis, emphasized, is that he didn't want to be on the card at all as this being anything but Pete Dye's original work. So a lot of history there, a lot of history in Ireland. Tourism Ireland is our sponsor for this season. Go to ireland.com/golf to learn about some of the places that probably inspired Pete Dye and some of his architectural habits and strategies. Ireland.com/golf. Joe, I will get into the full scope of Harbour Town here shortly, but I wanted to throw it over to you first and just talk about the significance of this place in American golf, in golf course architecture, and to Pete Dye's legacy.
Well, fine, Al. I am a longtime gigantic fan of Harbour Town, stemming from that first time I didn't get to play it. Famous family story when my brother and sisters and I were vacationing with our parents in Hilton Head in 1976, and we had seen Harbour Town on television for the Heritage Tournament. It was only about 7 years into its existence. And so we played the other two fine courses, then known as Sea Marsh and Ocean, at Sea Pines Plantation. And they were $12 a piece to play. That included a cart back in 1976. And my sister Lori and I asked my dad, we pleaded with him, could we please play Harbour Town, the tournament course? We saw it on television. And Dad said, no. I'm not paying $1 a hole to play golf. Yes, $18 it was in 1976. Dad's famous words that resonated for years until I could finally play Harbour Town myself. And when I did, it was significantly more than $1 a hole. But no, it's been a long-time favorite, not just since then, but in studying and learning about architecture, the evolution. Harbour Town was a game changer. Even by Pete Dye's admission, it was deliberately designed to be different from the prevailing style of the time. Pete, as you know, had already done Crooked Stick and the Golf Club, and both were extremely well received, but didn't have a national stage kind of to see what Pete Dye does. So this was a project that came to him through Jack Nicklaus, and Nicklaus, of course, consulted on the design. But Pete basically said, he didn't basically say, he said, looking at the Robert Trent Jones Sr. design being done at Palmetto Dunes just down the road, he went the opposite way. Instead of long tees, flowing fairways, huge bunkers, and elevated large greens, he said, I deliberately chose to design multiple tee positions, small to medium-sized shot-demanding greens, undulating fairways, long waist areas, and abrupt, steep pot bunkers. Wow. When this place debuted, all the major writers, critics of the time went crazy for it in a positive way. It was so different than anything being done. It was a throwback to old classic Northeast golf courses with small greens, having to work the ball the way you did in amidst the low country oaks. And yeah, it was a game changer, and Arnold Palmer broke out of a slump to win the very first Heritage at Harbour Town. News all over the world and spotlight on Harbour Town. So we'll get back to the changes and what Davis Love did, but what changed everything at that point was now developers saw that there was a different way of expressing themselves and having Pete Dye and others do golf courses that reflected this style with railroad ties, shoring up bunkers and ponds and lakes and so forth. And it was back to what I said 4 or 5 minutes ago, an absolute game changer, and was such an exciting time for folks who love golf course design.
Yeah, you mentioned that 1969, the first Heritage they played there. Davis Love III's father actually played in that tournament as well. There's a lot of symmetry with Davis and his family and this place. He's the all-time winningest player of this golf tournament, the RBC Heritage, as it's now known at Harbour Town. He's won 5 times. It was the site of his first win in 1987. He won the junior heritage out there. I mean, and now that ocean course that you mentioned, now called Atlantic Dunes, is a Davis Love III redo. So sort of it made all the sense in the world to have him and Love Golf Design come in. Joe, we were actually told he wasn't the first architect that they reached out to. So they had Tom Doak come in and take a tour of the site and tell them, what he thought should be changed or what they should do in the restoration effort. And Tom takes a trip around the course, comes back, and basically pleads with them, like, please don't change anything. Like, this is a course that revolutionized golf course design. It's too important to mess up. So please, whatever you do, he was too busy to be the one responsible. He said, I can't do it, but whoever does, like, please make sure they don't mess this up. And that's sort of something that was echoed. We also learned by the current tour pros, and also 25 years ago when they made some updates to the course the last time they did this. The course has largely remained unchanged since it opened, but 25 years ago when they were going to make changes, you had guys like Tom Watson, Peter Jacobson, Lanny Watkins, the big players in that era come and say, please don't change the integrity of this golf course. That turned the clock forward 25 years, and after it was announced that Harbour Town was going to close after the RBC Heritage this past year, Scotty Scheffler, Justin Thomas, Patrick Cantlay apparently very vocally said, don't change it. It's something that they love. It is unique on the tour in terms of a test. So many places that, only one type of player can win, and Harbour Town bucks that trend because anybody can make it happen at Harbour Town if you've got the strategy right, if you're in the right position. Length can help, but it also is somewhat irrelevant around that place, given its nature through the marsh forest there in Hilton Head. So that's sort of what happened with this restoration effort. The differences are pretty negligible. What you saw them do, and I'll read directly from their own release on this. The restoration ensures championship level conditions for both PGA Tour players and guests of the Sea Pines Resort while preserving classic shot values and designs. Improvements have been made to the agronomy and maintenance of the course, rebuilding all greens, bunkers, and bulkheads. The turf species, Tiff Eagle on the greens, Celebration Bermuda on the fairways, tees, and rough remain the same. So they were committed to honoring that legacy of Pete Dye and continuing that.
Yeah, I think everything you just said crystallizes from an architecture critic's perspective. Excuse me, as those of us who have roamed the country for all these years looking at trends in architecture. And it's funny because the tour pros, as you just mentioned, both old guard and new wave, love it. Absolutely love it. The course can't be overpowered. It always rewards shot making. So if that means it's small ball, it's about precision, so be it. You have to think about each shot and place it. There's always a perfect placement. And I think in this era, we've been riding this wave of width and angles and so forth, which again, it harkens back to the roots of golf and St. Andrews, and that's laudable. But most of the guys who reach elite level PGA Tour players make a mockery of that concept. Not all the time, but they can just overpower that width and angles, and kind of who cares what kind of angle you have in if you've only got 80 yards or 100 yards for every shot, unless conditions are so firm that you really do need the angle. Okay, so for everybody else that plays golf, again, this is doable. It's a treat. I go back to an era where Harbour Town in its infancy was only 6619 or so. It was less than 6,700 for many, many years. And then the renovation you talked about a few years back stretched it to 6,973, I believe. And then they actually got it over 7,000 not too long ago. But yeah, in this day and age, it's not 7,600 or 7,800. And that's why I think it remains so relevant no matter what level of game you play, and especially for the tour pros. I think, Al, it's been cut down a notch here or there by trends, by the fact that critics out there roaming around have been educated to say, well, you got pretty flat fairways. Gee, I wish there were more undulation in them, or more width to them to create those angles. The greens are smallish to medium size, and even though they have some funky configurations at times, there's not too much heavy contouring going on. Okay, that's why you don't change it. You don't go, oh, here's what's hot today, and let's just redo the greens and put all kinds of contours in them, and let's put mounds along the fairways just when mounds got hot in the 80s and 90s. You keep this as the museum piece it is, and you do the necessary updates, the refresh, which every golf course does, to make it play as much like it did what Pete Dye and, yes, Jack Nicklaus envisioned. And it sounds like, from what you're saying, what you observed, that that's what happened is the Sea Pines folks, Harbour Town, Davis Love, listened to all of that and understood what the mission was, which is let's spruce this up. We'll tweak this and tweak this, but no wholesale change because we want to preserve this absolute masterpiece of a golf course.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that yardage now, 7,131 yards. So, um, and they don't really have anywhere to really go and push that number up any further. So, a hole by hole, a little bit of uh, T length added here, moving some. They had some cart paths in the middle of fairways. Those got taken out, so nothing abruptly juts across the fairway. That's all grass. Adding or flattening certain areas of greens just a touch, just to add a little bit more um, playability and giving you an extra spot to put a pin. Maybe the biggest thing, Joe, was there were the addition of some stack sod bunker faces to some of those bunkers, which hadn't existed in recent years. But everything, sort of like Oakmont, they can find a photo where any change they made, it existed in a previous version of the golf course. So when they held the U.S. Open this past year, they talked about, this is the greatest hits of Oakmont. This is similar to that, in that, you know it's not something that is entirely a new idea. It's something that Pete had employed on this golf course in previous years. So maybe most notably the 14th hole, Joe, that hole that has played the toughest for pros over the years on the PGA Tour. They did a couple of things. They doubled the size of that heritage tee box at the back that the pros play from. There was one pot bunker there that they changed and made it that stack sod look. And they added one more pot bunker right next to it, which existed in a previous iteration of this course. So both stack sod pot bunkers that you can't see from the tee. If you're looking at that hole, there's a creek, water all along the right, bulkhead lined green, and seemingly the only place to bail is left. It really is the only place to bail is short left, because long left will probably get you into one of those pot bunkers, and it's extremely difficult up and down from there. So going from 1 to 2 bunkers there, the look of them is different with the stack sod. That is what stuck out the most. But a big change at the 9th hole, that short par 4, was they raised the entire green complex 14 inches. Can you tell by the naked eye, looking from picture to picture, that total difference? Probably not, but a different element to that green and coming up to a slightly more elevated surface. And they have those interesting, almost the snowman collection of bunkers behind that green. Now 2 of those are also stacked sod. So I was looking at those like, you could have a ball run into that and be stuck on the face and basically have to take it unplayable. Not that it was that easy of a shot to begin with from back there, but you could be stuck up against the surface or the sod there in these bunkers. So we had an amazing time. The event they had was a shotgun start, so everybody was out there on a different hole. We started on 4. They had us, in the interest of time, play a shamble, so we all did drives, and you took the best drive, and everyone played their own ball from there. And that was a good way to do it, because it was, if people now listening to this episode recall, this was Tuesday, the 11th of November, which was a extremely cold day, probably coldest day of the winter so far, or fall, out there. So it sped things up. It's a good way to do it. Harbour Town, you can find a way to get pretty frustrated playing your own ball out there, but this is a sort of a looser feel to it, and be able to enjoy the surroundings and changes. So it was a lot of fun.
Well, it does sound like a lot of fun, as it generally is anytime you get a chance to play Harbour Town. Uh, Al, again, you get to see a lot of golf courses. You play a pretty good game. How do you look at Harbour Town compared to, say, a lot of the, big, massive golf courses that we see these days for championship purposes?
Yeah, it's a museum piece, like you said. It's a bucket list course. It is sort of endlessly fascinating in the way that makes you look back from when you're standing over your second shot after your tee shot, and think back, and how could I have done that differently? I should have thought this hole through every shot from the tee to the green before I started playing it. Because a lot of golf courses don't ask you to really think on that first shot. It's just hit your tee shot in the fairway, and then we'll figure it out from there. This is all about the angle of attack. You can be right dead center in the middle of the fairway and be out of position in some cases. So it is an intricate puzzle. It's almost like, you have a 100-piece puzzle that is pretty straightforward. This is one of those puzzles that has the very odd shaped pieces that you can't really find the edge. You're not sure what goes where exactly, and it takes a little bit longer to figure out. I still quite haven't figured this place out, Joe. I mean, if I had been playing my own ball, I would have probably shot in the mid to high 80s out there, and I felt like I played pretty well. It just you pay a price for a lack of position out there, and you can get in some of these precarious bunkers that Pete Dye has designed, and um, it's not an easy task to maintain scoring a par out there on each hole. So um, I like it. It's vexed me every time I've played it. Again, I haven't quite solved it. So um, the experience of playing well somewhere may lead me to like it more. Uh, I've come to appreciate Harbour Town more over time. Where the first time I played, I was this is crazy. I can't figure this out. And now I'm like starting to get it a little bit more. So, um, but it's amazing. I mean, perennial PGA Tour venue. Um, those last couple holes when you finally get to see the lighthouse on 18 is awesome experience that everyone should probably do if they're a big fan of the game um, and architecture. It will open your eyes to things you just haven't seen anywhere else.
A great segue, actually, although I wanted to jump into something even before we hit that. But as I'm looking at what was done, and I think you've covered some of this, a big, very nice, welcomed aesthetic change and some playability aspects are removing the cart path to the right of 10 and the right of 16.
Mm-hmm.
For folks that know Harbour Town, that have watched the Heritage, that's an amazing gathering spot. There's nothing in between the 10th fairway and then 16, which meets up and then doglegs to the left. And now you're looking at Calabogie Sound for your second shot. But that was like party central. Well, there's the lighthouse, of course, that's party central. But during the Heritage, you have these homes that are not too far away, and it's where you meet people, kind of like being by the tree at Augusta. And just having those kind of garish asphalt wide cart paths, which are great for carts and resort play, but a lot of tee shots would hit them and go far, far away, much longer than intended. But yeah, okay. How else are you going to route people through those two golf holes? So it looks to me like they've done away with that and gone to kind of a waste area cart path, much more natural looking, not going to get the big boing bounce off of that like you would, on the other style of cart path. So that sounds like a huge plus, and it sounds like they did it several times throughout the golf course.
Several times.
Um,
Yeah, and basically anywhere where they previously had a cart path that ran through across the middle of the hole, they essentially got rid of that. So if it was in the middle, they grassed that over, and on the sides of the hole, they created a waste area path to drive through instead of the concrete.
so the other change that you talked about were the bunkers, and in the pot bunkers going to uh, more of the classic Scottish stack sod style. And over the years, there are, maintenance issues that go along with that, where those might have either dissipated or disappeared entirely. Maybe it's just personal taste in the folks that were running Harbour Town over time. But it looks like these, in many cases, have been restored. And, it's funny because we go back so many years, but Pete Dye really did reintroduce pot bunkers into the vernacular of American golf course design, borrowing liberally from Scottish courses, which he gave full credit for. It was a famous trip that he took to attend and play in or attend the Walker Cup in 1963. And he and his wife Alice took an extended trip around the British Isles and it just changed his way of thinking about design. And that's where he came back to the US and introduced railroad ties, sleepers as they call them across the pond, as bulkheads for these features. Very dramatic looking. They just look scary. And they're not going to be forgiving. So with stack sod bunkers, which are pretty classic on links courses where the wind is howling and you want bunkers to stay in place and not erode, that is the Scottish look that he intended from the beginning with those great early courses, including Harbour Town. And in fact, the book that he did with author Mark Shaw 25 or so years ago was called Bury Me in a Pot Bunker. So you know how important these little bunkers were to him under those circumstances. So, those were a couple of the aspects. I mean, they do involve playability, but just as much an aesthetic at making it that much better, that much more memorable in the trip around.
Yeah. Davis talked about that too, that the technology of the sod bunker has changed, so it's now synthetic turf lined as opposed to natural. So they last a much longer time, much easier to maintain, all that. So, that may be a reason that you would have seen those be taken out of the fold. And now in today's age, you can keep them up there a while. So you're right. It does give a distinct look.
Well, Al, you had alluded to it earlier, and part of what makes Harbour Town so distinctive is its unique aspects, both on design features and individual holes, where at the time that Harbour Town opened in the late 60s, you didn't see this anywhere. I mean, Pete had done this style a few other places, but this was a first in the Low Country where you had so many different par fours that resonated for a variety of reasons. So you had this really tough eighth hole, which looked fairly ordinary, but it had a dark lagoon style pond guarding the left side and left front of the green. And it was, two big shots you needed. One hole later, you've got this 332-yard par four, narrow through the trees, and then it actually opens up. But it plays to this wingnut-shaped green for you hardware fans. You mentioned it; they had raised it by 14 inches. Oh my gosh, what a frustrating, tiny little shot. You mentioned they redid the bunkers behind the green, making them even more severe. And in front of the green, I mean, whether you're coming in from 60, 80, 100, 120, whatever you laid back with, it is such a precise shot, no matter where they put the hole location that day. And man, oh man, when they put it in the left side of the wing nut and you wind up on the right side, that's the superintendent's nightmare, because really your only way to get there is by chipping it over the pot bunker there and getting it close. So, he's basically saying, I'm going to give you this little tiny par four, but you had better choose correctly with angle, what you're laying up with, and then be really, really precise on that second shot. The 13th hole, another very unusually shaped green, not quite as severe and pronounced as the 9th, but something similar in terms of the sections that hole locations can occupy. And back can be really tough, as it typically is, because you don't want to go over the green. But front has water there, or the bulkheaded bunker. And, again, it is just, pick your poison, so to speak. So, and then obviously finishing on 18, looked like they were able to do something with the back tee and move it even closer to the marsh,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right.
just elevating the drama a little bit more. And then 18, a big golf hole, not as big for today's hitting pros, but when the wind is up, and that's where it gets fun. When you emerge from the trees and get 16, 17, 18 in your own round or in the RBC Heritage, and you've got some breeze to deal with, one of the greatest finishes in all of golf.
Yeah, that whole, it seems like it gets tougher every time I play it because I understand it again more. It's the drive is such an easy, placement, the huge fairway to land on, but the green is so small, deceptively small. It looks like there should be another 50% more green surface when you're looking at the approach to the right of the green, but all of that in reality is sort of gradual runoff fairway area. So it's one of the great finishing holes. You're absolutely right. But I mean, I even go all the way back to the first hole, and that par four being such a mind game from the beginning. You have to hit a ball through like a 30-yard wide chute of trees to a fairway that opens up, but um, realistically, you want to be on the right side of that fairway. If you're on the left half of that fairway, there are another set of overhanging trees that essentially blocks you out from a green that slopes front to back. So placement's the name of the game from the get-go at Harbour Town, and one is pretty evident of that. You're absolutely right, though. You're not going to see many greens like 13 with
Sorry.
that finger, that bulk-headed finger of green sticking out in the front, and an expanse, lake of sand, if you will, surrounding the entire front of that green. But again, it starts with the tee ball. Like, you have no shot there unless you hit the right portion of the fairway again in finding your way to the hole. So it demands precision. It demands you think, and there's a great motivation to playing a round of golf where you have to actually think versus just swing the club and find it and hit it again, all that. So the more and more I play it, the more and more I think about it and talk about it with you, Joe. I absolutely love Harbour Town. It'll be interesting to see how it's received in tournament play when they play the Heritage there next year. But from all indications, it's essentially the same course that they know and love. So hopefully the pros will think good things about Davis's changes, and the resort playing public will be able to experience something truly unique in the world of golf.
Good deal, Al. Yeah, it's always a pleasure to talk Harbour Town.
Yeah. I hope you and I can go back and play there together again and figure it out a little bit more. Finally finish the puzzle that's been sitting on the table every year. We're a puzzling family, so that's what we do. We put the puzzle out around the holidays. You go and tinker and try to finish it by the end of the year. Harbour Town, all the pieces are still out on the table, and we're not really sure where they go.
I'm game.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, thanks, Joe.
Take care, Al. See you next time.